But we have to start, if we start late in there, it's, if we start late. Welcome, Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, good afternoon. My name is Angelica Jacome. I am the Director of the FAO Office of Small Island Developing States, Least Developed Countries, and Landlocked Developing Countries. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this event on enhancing climate resilience of SIDS, coasts, communities, and ecosystems at the Moana Blue Pacific Pavilion. As you are aware, Small Island Developing States, SIDS as they're known, are large ocean states. The uniqueness of their marine and land ecosystems combined with their particular social and economic situations leads to the extremely high vulnerability of SIDS to climate change and external shocks, such as the one experienced with the COVID-19 pandemic. SIDS are among the most impacted countries that suffer disproportionately from the damaging impacts of climate change, even though they contribute very little to the global greenhouse emissions. Climate change impacts such as ocean warming, extreme weather events, sea level rise, and erratic precipitation are already affecting natural ecosystems, livelihoods, assets, and coastal infrastructure. It also compromises the ability of ocean ecosystems to provide a vital source of food security, nutrition, and employment for SIDS populations. At the same time, despite their high vulnerability to climate change, SIDS are a critical hub of climate solutions due to their abundant natural resources and large ocean areas. The goal of this event is to gather diverse stakeholders to discuss responses and opportunities to address climate vulnerabilities of the coastal areas in SIDS and to showcase climate solutions coming out of SIDS. We have a very busy program ahead, and we will try to leave some time for questions and answers at the end of the event. To deliver opening remarks, we have Ms. Maria Elena Semedo, Deputy Director General of FAO. Madam Semedo, without further ado, you have the floor.
Thank you, Angelica, and good afternoon to all esteemed panelists, all participants here and connected. I am very pleased to join you today in this event. As the majority of you here in this room, I am from a small island development states. I am from Cabo Verde in West Africa, and I share with you all the challenge and unique challenge I can say faced by the small island development states. What are those challenges? They have limited arable land, they face frequent natural disaster, depend on small-scale food production and ocean resources, and are vulnerable to external shocks. And the vulnerability, the lack of capacity to face when the shocks arrive, I think is our common trait. And climate change intensifies those challenges as I refer. Ocean and freshwater systems are getting warmer, with less oxygen, and extreme weather events are becoming more intense and frequent. The frequency is also another challenge. This is leading to significant change in the accessibility, availability, and trade of food and aquatic products. In short, SIDS will be big losers of global warming if nothing is done. Brother and sister, we cannot keep business as usual. However, SIDS are a critical hub for climate solutions. We can and we have to bring and to share the solutions we have in our laboratories. They are larger ocean areas, and abundant resources have great potential for adaptation and mitigation. In some seeds, aquatic foods account for 50% of more of total animal protein intake, a vital contribution to food security. FAO works in close partnership with SIDS in all regions of Atlantic, Indian Ocean, the South China Seas, the Caribbean, and the Asia Pacific, contributing to the Samoa Pathway priorities and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. FAO supports SIDS members through programs such as the SIDS Solutions Forum and through projects on the ground aimed at adapting fisheries and aquaculture to climate change. SIDS are also an important focus on blue transformation. FAO launched now the initiative on the blue transformation. It's not the blue growth, because we don't want only growth. We need incremental change. We need to transform. And our vision is for a more sustainable, productive, equitable, and impactful aquatic food sector. And the blue transformation has three main components. The first is to expand aquaculture as an essential adaptation tool and an opportunity to increase food security. Second, ensure the effective management of all fishery resources, all of them, the protected, the one we are using sustainable, in a way they are properly managed and they are tackling to avoid the IUU fishing. And third, develop and upgrade aquatic food value chains. We lose and we waste too much from the sea to the plate. And this is also needs to be reduced. We talk about 30%, but in some countries is much more than 30%. And this event will provide us a great opportunity to start pushing on those transformations, how to work together, how we can prioritize solutions, and to ensure that the seeds thrive and adapt in the face of climate change. Let's share this moment to share our experience, to see our best practices, but more than that, to be together, united at one voice as SIDS regarding our challenge, our opportunities, and how are the solutions we can bring to the world, because no one can talk on our behalf. We should be the ones sharing what we are facing and what we bring to the table as a solution. And I'm very happy that SIDS has been very active in this COP. I think the Prime Minister of Barbados, just to name some of our leaders, being here and bringing SIDS top on the agenda of this discussion. Thank you again for being here, and all the best during this discussion, Angelica.
Thank you, Madam Semedo, for highlighting the urgency, the need to act urgently, and also the power of blue transformation. Unfortunately, Ms. Semedo has to leave to another event. But before leaving, I wish to thank her again for her remarks, and she is indeed a champion for SIDS. We will now move to our high-level guests to set the scene. As you are aware, oceans featured in the Glasgow Climate Pact coming out of the last COP, where countries explicitly recognized the need for cross-cutting integration of oceans into all relevant UNFCCC processes, as well as the annual ocean dialogue. The momentum continued this year at the UN's Ocean Conference and at the adopted Lisbon Declaration, which emphasized that particular attention should be paid to the needs of SIDS. Therefore, our high-level guest is with SID representative, the Minister of Samoa, is a very timely and relevant. Our first speaker in this is the Honorable Tulelusulu Cedric Schuster, I hope I pronounced that correctly, probably not, Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Tourism, to speak on behalf of Samoa. Samoa is among the most vulnerable to climate change, with a large portion of its population and infrastructure located in low-lying coastal areas. Samoa is also the next chair of the Alliance of Small Island Developing States, AOSIS. Excellency, could you please share with us Samoa's approach to adaptation of coastal marine ecosystems to climate change and what is needed to build the resilience of coastal areas in Samoa? Minister, you have the floor if you'd like. If you prefer here, of course, as you prefer, if you'd like to.
Thank you, moderator. Talofa again. Some of you might be already tired of seeing me speak about nothing, but welcome. If you look on your left side, for those who haven't been here before, that's the small island states, that is the Pacific. They constitute 30% of the Earth's surface. That's a lot of ocean. Yet we are the most vulnerable, as mentioned. You've also heard all the data, the science about the impacts and the vulnerability that not only the Pacific, but our alliance of small island developing states. And along with continuing to advocate and in international mechanisms such as the UNFCCC and the COP, we are doing our part to try and to adapt to build our resilience. And then today I will talk a little bit about Samoa and what are some of the activities that we have been engaging over the last 20 years while we await the world to actually turn around and help us build our resilience. We've developed our Samoa Ocean Strategy, of which identifies the main plan out, the marine spatial planning, and to identify our critical marine ecosystem areas and the different activities that we need to do in that. We've also developed our national adaptation plan that further identifies the vulnerable and areas for us to adapt. We've been engaged with different organizations through the UN and other financial mechanisms of GCF to also implement some of our projects in terms of building our resilience. And primary for this is we have developed over the past 15 years what we call as the community integrated management risk plans, of which each community of the 51 districts we have in Samoa have worked with the government to develop and identify their risk and then develop plans for which to build their resilience. We've also worked in other areas that we have a project through the GEF about building the economy-wide approach to climate change, which aimed at enhancing disaster risk management, including resilience through activities such as the Green Wall along one of the most probable flood plains in Samoa. We worked on a Ridge to Reef program, and this is an integrated management approach that focuses on the intercorrelation of natural and social systems, starting from the higher inland area, the ridge through the watersheds, coastal habitats, lagoon, and the reef. And there we've also developed our national integrated climate change plan and policy that we integrate in all the different sectors of our economy, from the health, agriculture, tourism. We've integrated climate change resilience to build a climate change resilience. And then each sector is now working on implementing some of their work. These are just a few of the activities that as governments are doing. But as we all know, as Pacific Islands and small islands developing states, every day our communities are finding ways to adapt. Without funds, without any help, they have to deal with it on a daily basis, be it a cyclone, be it a high tide, king tide, be it a drought. We are also looking at our traditional mechanisms, to our traditional knowledge, to help us as communities build a resilience. And we also need to emphasize this for our region, as reaching out to our traditional knowledge that our communities and our ancestors have already developed in the past. So it's bridging the new science with the old mechanism and trying to adapt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for drawing our attention to some of the approaches that are used in Samoa, and also for drawing attention to the issue of traditional knowledge and its importance in defining these approaches. Would also like to congratulate you for your call to action, given the vulnerabilities and the need for us to increase our partnerships to support small island developing states. So thank you very much. Our next speakers will present climate data and findings emerging from 2 out of 4 global studies commissioned by the FAO to contribute to fill the data gap and support countries to better inform their climate rationale, design adaptation measures, and proposals for climate financing. The other 2 will be presented at 4 p.m. at the FAO Pavilion next door, and you're all welcome to join us. To avoid connection issues, the 2 presentations are pre-recorded, but the experts are connected virtually and will join us for a live Q&A if time permits. The first presentation will be delivered by Mr. Sebastian Matthew from the International Collective in Support of Fish Workers, ICSF. He will present trends and gaps in social protection in SIDS, coastal areas, using the fisheries sector as an example. Sebastian, you have the floor.
Collective in support of fish workers. Hello, I am Sebastian Matthew from the International Collective in Support of Fish Workers. Our organization has been collaborating with FAO this year to undertake a survey of social protection, early warning systems, and anticipatory action in responding to shocks in the fisheries sector in the ACP region. Social protection stands for specific interventions to protect, promote, and transform the livelihoods of the poor. 3 types of programs examined in this context are social assistance, which are non-contributory, social insurance, which are contributory, and labor market interventions. Shock responsive social protection was also in focus that would help manage risks and impacts of shocks at the community and household level. A survey of social protection schemes has been undertaken across the ACP region in 6 African SIDS in the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic, in 16 Caribbean SIDS, and in 15 Pacific SIDS. The survey included schemes in relation to climate change and shock responsive social protection, and schemes in response to COVID-19 and their coherence with fisheries policies. The results were validated in 3 separate workshops, 1 for each of the region. The survey showed that most countries followed universal social assistance programs in Africa and the Pacific, and universal social insurance in the Caribbean. Cuba and Dominican Republic were the exceptions. The coverage of women was less than that of men in most social protection schemes. While the African SIDS relied on universal social assistance programs in general, countries like Mauritius and Seychelles had social insurance schemes for fishermen with subsidies from the government. And when it comes to SIDS like Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu in the Pacific, and Comoros in the Indian Ocean, informal community-based social protection through kinship appeared to be the norm. In Guinea-Bissau, Cabo Verde, Comoros, and Sao Tome and Principe, social assistance financed by external donor assistance is quite prevalent, especially after the outbreak of COVID-19. When it comes to fast onset and slow onset events, a multi-hazard early warning system is in place in most of the Caribbean SIDS and some Pacific SIDS. Countries like Suriname also have such a system at the district level. Some countries like Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines have a Fisher's early warning emergency response system as well. The survey highlighted the need for substantially enhancing the coverage of social protection and the need for robust multi-hazard early warning systems with predefined triggers for action. Sustainable financing has been flagged as a necessary step to support early warning systems, anticipatory action, and recovery. And up-to-date social registry is recommended to be developed and maintained. Greater coordination between different agencies, including social protection, finance, climate change, and fisheries is sought to better integrate social protection systems into early warning systems, also to benefit the fishery sector. These measures, to some extent, can help to cope with the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services, loss of lives and assets, and loss of livelihood in fisheries as flagged by the 6th assessment report on small islands of IPCC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian, for this very informative presentation on the commonalities and differences between the social protection approaches in different SIDS regions and in between SIDS countries within the regions. We're all aware that SIDS are stewards of abundant natural resources in large ocean areas, as we've mentioned frequently. This represents an extensive untapped potential to develop nature-based solutions as effective measures to strengthen adaptation and support mitigation. For the next presentation, I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Fabio Attore from Sapienza University to share the results of a cost-benefit analysis of nature-based solutions in SIDS. Mr. Attore, you have the floor or the screen. Thank you very much.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fabio Attore. I'm from the Sapienza University of Rome. And this presentation is about an analysis of the cost benefit to prioritize nature-based solutions in small island developing states. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is a unique opportunity to support SIDS in addressing structural and external challenges, including small size, remoteness, narrow resource and export base, and exposure to global environmental challenges and external economic shocks to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Intrinsic fragilities of SIDS made them particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change due to the synergistic effect of multiple factors, including the rise of the sea level, increase of the frequency and intensity of extreme events, ocean acidification, and marine heat waves. This in turn can lead to other impacts such as coastal erosion, floods, and coastal ecosystem degradations. These processes together are threatening the livelihood and the long-term existence of whole island nation. To deal with these issues, a new management concept emerged defined as nature-based solutions, which includes, among others, principles, methods, and approaches derived from ecological restoration, ecological engineering, ecosystem-based adaptation and mitigation, and others. NBS are aimed at conserving and restoring the capacity of ecosystems to provide services to the livelihood of SIDS communities and support their capacity to adapt to climate change. These services can be grouped in three broad categories: provisioning, regulating, and culture. Our assessment is focused on three main ecosystems: mangroves, coral reefs, and seagrass beds, which provide essential services to 9 selected SIDS from 3 regions: the Caribbean, Africa, and the Pacific Ocean. Data on mangroves and coral reefs and seagrass beds were obtained from global repositories and were processed together with multispectral satellite images and high-resolution land cover maps to assess their current extent and dynamics. The economic value of ecosystem services was based on the direct and indirect use values, including estimates on 3 types of ecosystem services: provisioning, dividing subsistence fishing and commercial fishing; regulating, divided in coastal protection and carbon sequestration; while for what concerns the cultural services, we are presenting data about tourism. Data sources included national services and censuses, international databases, gray and scientific literature. Estimates are given in values expressed in US dollar for 2022. As a case study for the Caribbean, we present the results obtained from the Dominican Republic with a snapshot of the cartographic products. On the right side of this slide, you can see the distribution of mangroves, seagrass beds, and coral reefs in the northern part of the country. The slide shows the synthesis of the assessment. On the left side, you can see the raw socioeconomic and environmental data we used, while on the right side of the results. For the Dominican Republic, the overall monetary value of the 3 services is provided. In this case, the most important services in monetary terms is tourism, while coral reefs is the ecosystem showing a higher value. The second case studies for the African continent, we present Guinea-Bissau, located in the western part of the continent. And as you can see here, there is the location of the country and the distribution on a snapshot of the mangroves along the coast. In this case, we present only the result for the mangroves due to the lack of data for the coral reef and seagrass beds. As you can see, commercial fishing is the prevalent services from an economic point of view. The last case study from the Pacific Ocean is the Solomon Islands. In this case, not only the economic value of the services were assessed, but also we provide a breakdown of the contributions for each service. In this case, while subsistence fishing is the most important services, the contribution of coral reefs and mangroves is comparable. We conclude with some key findings and take-home messages. The selection of the most appropriate NBS must be supported by cost-benefit analysis such as this presented here. At global level, data are available, but still incomplete and fragmented to produce a robust comparative analysis, as the differences among the 3 case studies are shown. Ecological and conservation activities must be defined and implemented according to a systemic and holistic approach, integrating biological, environmental, and socioeconomic components, and relevant data must be used according to the scale of analysis from local, national, regional, and global. And there is a need for the development of standardized procedures and tools to allow for the replicability of the assessment, comparability of the results, and long-term monitor of the outcomes of the interventions. With that, I conclude, and thank you very much for your attention. And in case you are interested in knowing more about the details of the methodology we used for the assessment, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Thank you, Fabio, for these excellent results, and the takeaway message is once these studies are published, we would be delighted if you would be able to share them with you. So please stay tuned. With these informative insights, we have a better understanding of climate challenges in SIDS coastal areas, as well as possible solutions to address them. Now we have the opportunity to learn from practical experiences in different countries on how to move from solutions to implementations. And in this respect, let me first invite Ms. Raquel Moses, who is the CEO of Climate Smart Accelerator. Raquel, could you please tell us about your work in the Climate Smart Accelerator in carrying out And what experiences and lessons learned from this specific context? Raquel, you have the floor.
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so at the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator, we're working across 28 Caribbean countries towards climate action, and we're seeing a lot of really amazing things taking place. For example, Grenada is doing a lot to protect their shoreline using baskets in a part of Grenada called Grenville and putting them to sort of stop the breakwater from eroding the coastline. And in doing that, it's creating an area for like lobster and fish to as a nursery for those marine life, but it's also creating a real interest at the community level for them to get involved in protecting the coastline. And so we're seeing these things from Grenada in the south to Bahamas and even Bermuda in the north, a number of different solutions. And what's beautiful about it is that the communities are getting involved and they feel empowered. We're seeing things like mangrove rehabilitation being used as a tourism activity so that if you're traveling to Bahamas, for example, you can replant a mangrove and something that will be living and protecting them for generations to come. So it's really exciting what we're seeing and the community getting really involved. And the more that we get communities involved, it is seeming to make a difference because they are owning this, because they're seeing the impact so directly. And as much as the data is very, very compelling, they don't really need the data. They're living this reality every day about what's happening. And we're eager to learn from the Pacific in terms of what you guys are doing and what we can exchange in terms of lessons learned, especially at the community level.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's now on. Okay, sorry. Thank you very much, Raquel, for these interesting experiences that you're telling us about. I am particularly struck with the community involvement, the engagement that they have, and that not only are you able to engage the community, but you're also engaging outsiders with people who are coming to for tourism activities, and they're participating in these community activities. And I think it's a very important for the ownership of the communities for these solutions to be implemented to go forward. And now I'd like to invite Victoria Alice, our youth representative from the Seychelles. As we all know, youth participation is very important in solutions and implementation. So Victoria, could you please tell us how youth could be involved in the design and implementation of adaptation measures in coastal areas, and how to raise the awareness of young generations to make sure that policymakers take into account the benefits of future generations?
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, I think this COP reminded us that youth are great agents of change, right? And I think I can completely echo what's been said in terms of ownership, in terms of meaningful engagement. Back in Seychelles, unlike the Pacific, we're not seeing the direct impacts of climate change. In a certain way, but we haven't really felt the drastic impacts. And that means that for some of our youth, actually the majority of the youth, are aware of climate change, but don't necessarily feel connected to climate change. So I think the approach that we need to take to get them involved in climate adaptation and mitigation in a meaningful way is to ensure that they have the knowledge, because to act, you need to have the knowledge, right? So it's ensuring that through the educational system, through the NGOs, that there are strong climate-driven material educational programs that are basically put across the different islands that we have. And the approach that we should be taking, one major project that's in place at the moment is a Ridge to Reef project. It's a $30 million project across 6 years. And what they've done is they're looking at climate adaptation, both from a land-based and coastal-based approach. So they're seeing how land affects the ocean, and the ocean also has an impact on land. And in the middle of all of that, they're trying to put the community. And I think that's that's the way to go. I think to make youth or any other stakeholder, any community group attached or connected to the issue, is they need to see the direct impacts they have on their livelihood, but also the direct benefits they can gain from getting involved in climate adaptation. So I think that that's one approach I would say that we need to being pushed forward, is that Ridge to Reef approach. And having this year, we launched the second local conference of youth, Seychelles. So it's a younger registered event, and it's a 4-day conference. And we're trying to use those kind of platforms to inform youth on what's happening in the country, what skill sets they need to take action, and to consult them on the various policies. So I think it's making that connection, ensuring that there are platforms as such as this that exists, where they can have a direct interaction with our policymakers and where they feel like they are being consulted. It's not just a one-way approach. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and for stressing the part that you need to be seriously engaged and consulted. It's not just what tokenism is that we're expected, that youth really have a role, and they have to be not only seated at the table, but they have to be listened to. Thank you very much. Next, we will turn to Ms. Krishni Apadu, who is a senior lecturer on environmental and climate change policy at the University of Mauritius. We know that many SIDS, including Mauritius, have rich fisheries production traditions. However, sometimes the model's shown that if nothing is done for SIDS, their future may become very bleak when it comes to their marine coastal resources. Krishni, what policy advice do you have for Mauritius and other SIDS to maintain the performance of their aquatic food production in the context of climate change?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. So I will mention very quickly 2 aspects of policy that I think is very important. One of them is ensuring that the knowledge and the expertise of local communities are taken into consideration whenever policy is being designed for sustainable fisheries. So what happens is that in small islands, more often than not, we forget that local communities, they have resources and they have their own local ways of doing things, which is forgotten. So I think we really need to involve them in policy making and in also decision making in terms of sustainable fisheries. Secondly, I think what I've heard is that we have very good sustainable solutions from other regions. So I also think that SIDS countries in all the 3 regions, the AIMS, the Pacific, and the Caribbean, they should be sharing knowledge, sharing expertise and experience. And thirdly, I think there's also something that we forget, and we should mention youth, as you've rightly pointed out, because they are innovative and they're also at the cusp of technological innovation. So I think we should not be scared to involve them. I think they are part of the solution, and it's going to be really good if we can involve youth within the policy making and also making their voices heard and also taking into consideration what they think is good in terms of sustainable fisheries and also community building within coastal communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's a common theme about engaging communities, youth. There's also a common theme about exchanging experiences between SIDS. And I think here there's an important development at FAO. We're developing a SIDS solutions platform as an opportunity for different SIDS to share these different solutions that they have and have this knowledge exchange. So thank you very much for that. We now have a little bit of time. We have around 3 minutes for some questions and answers. So therefore, I'd like people on the floor or maybe online, if you'd like to ask a question, this is an opportunity. Please introduce yourself and ask your question. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Good afternoon. Very nice presentation today. My name is Molly Elkena, and I'm from the Marshall Islands. The question I wanted to ask either one of the panelists. I know that you've been talking about sharing information and sharing technology and all that. Is there any example, or does your country also do exchanging of traditional knowledge in terms of climate change? Because I know that there are some preservations that they used to do in the old times that can be used in modern days. So I wanted to see if you do also do traditional knowledge sharing. Thank you.
So who would like to take a first stab at that? Okay, Raquel, please go ahead.
Sure. I know we're working really closely with the Commonwealth, and they are working with, in Dominica, the Kalinago people to share their traditional methods of conservation and how that's working, and trying to shed that around the Caribbean. Now, has that gone across to the Pacific, or have we? I'm not aware of any instances of that, but I think it's a really valuable thing that we should be doing. Looking back at all of the things that we thought were primitive that are now really restorative and regenerative and protection mechanisms for our environment. But right now, the Kalinago are probably the most proliferating indigenous community within the Caribbean. And so we are learning from them about their traditional practices.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel. Krishna, if you'd like to quickly address.
Yes, I would like just to mention in Rodrigues Island, which is part of Mauritius, the traditional fishing of octopus. They usually, the fishing communities, they used to close the octopus fishing season for some time during the year to allow for regeneration of octopus. So this has been translated into a law, which is also adopted in the mainland of Mauritius. So that's an example of traditional fishing techniques that have turned into law on the island.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Victoria, you want to add something?
Yeah, we do have a similar example back in Seychelles. We're now seeing the fishermen communities actually taking their own initiative to reintroduce the seasonal so basically they know that the spillover effect is vital for sustainable fisheries, and without anyone imposing anything on them, they've taken that initiative to say, okay, we used to do that back in the 50s, back in the 60s, and they're reintroducing that now. So it goes to show it's coming back.
Thank you. I think with some really good examples, both at a regional level and in country level, of how these traditional knowledges are being brought into this era. And now, unfortunately, it's time for us to start closing this event on enhancing climate resilience and SIDS coast communities and ecosystems. I believe we could stay here forever chit-chatting and having different experiences, not only from our panelists, but here from the floor. I like to thank you all for being a part of this. We have a tremendous amount of work ahead of us. We have taken good note of the experiences and results shared today, and I hope it could be reviewed and applied where possible. We would like to finally thank the Moana Blue Pacific Pavilion, Audrey there, who's also been keeping time for us, for hosting today's event, and thank all of our speakers for collaborating on this event. We must act collectively to support SIDS and coastal communities who are the most affected by climate change and the fragility of coastal ecosystems. The time to act is now. We need to scale up implementation of climate actions in aquatic food systems and other ocean economic sectors to ultimately achieve resilience of the ecosystem and communities in SIDS. Many thanks again for your time, in taking time from your busy schedule to be with us. We look forward to seeing you at future events, and especially with sharing the final studies of the published once they're published. Thank you very much.